Welcome to this explainer.
Today, we're going to explore a deeply counterintuitive truth about money. We're pretty much all raised to believe that mastering your finances requires a sky-high IQ, complex math skills, or some fancy degree. But what if the data tells us an entirely different story? What if building real wealth is actually not about your intelligence at all, but rather exactly how you behave?
To see what I mean, imagine two very different men. On one side, we have Ronald Read. He was a humble janitor from Vermont who swept floors, drove a secondhand car, and lived in a modest $12,000 house. On the other side, we have Richard Fiscone, a Harvard-educated Merrill Lynch executive who retired in his 40s to a sprawling mansion equipped with 2 pools and 11 bathrooms. On paper, Fiscone is the certified financial genius, and Read is just, well, an ordinary guy.
But when these two men passed away, the world was completely shocked by the final tally. Ronald Read, the quiet janitor, left behind a staggering $8 million fortune, giving most of it away to charity. And Richard Fiscone? He actually died completely broke. That massive mansion with the 11 bathrooms was sold at a foreclosure auction for 75% less than its value.
So you really have to ask yourself, how on earth does a janitor beat a millionaire executive? It's because money isn't a hard science like physics or engineering. Managing money is a soft skill. It's a psychological game where your emotional restraint and your everyday behavior dictate your final outcome way more than your raw intellect ever could.
Let's look at a few reasons why. Starting with Section 1, the invisible advantage, luck and risk.
We naturally want to attribute all of our success to 100% pure effort. It feels great to say, I earned this entirely on my own. But the reality, luck and risk are siblings. We exist in a vastly complex game with 7 billion other moving parts, which makes sheer chance an unavoidable reality in literally every financial journey. Think about one of the most successful men in history, Bill Gates. We all know Gates is brilliant and hardworking, but let's just look at the math for a second. In 1968, there were about 303 million high schoolers in the world. Out of all those millions, only about 300 students attended Lakeside School in Seattle, which just happened to be one of the only high schools in the entire world with a computer. Gates himself admits if there had been no Lakeside, there would have been no Microsoft.
So, Gates experienced literal 1 in a million luck. But here's the heartbreaking flip side of that coin: risk. Gates had a best friend named Kent Evans, who was just as smart, just as ambitious, and totally shared Gates' vision. But Kent tragically died in a mountaineering accident before graduation. The odds of being killed on a mountain in high school? Also roughly 1 in a million. It's the exact same magnitude of force, just working in the total opposite direction.
The crucial point here, perfectly captured by Professor Scott Galloway, is that nothing is as good or as bad as it seems. When judging anyone's financial success, and that includes your own, you have to give luck and risk their proper respect. It'll keep you humble when you're winning, and it'll help you forgive yourself when you stumble.
Moving right along to Section 2, the secret of time and confounding compounding.
If you really want to be rich, don't look for a 1,000% return in a single year. Look for consistency. Take Warren Buffett. His name is synonymous with investing genius, but his true secret wasn't just picking great stocks. His secret is time. Out of his massive multi-billion-dollar net worth, a mind-blowing $81.5 billion of it came after his 65th birthday. He didn't just invest well, he stayed in the game for 3/4 of a century.
And this chart brilliantly illustrates how compounding actually works. Look at that massive spike on the right. You are rewarded enormously at the very end of a long, uninterrupted timeline. If Buffett had started investing at 30 and decided to retire at 60 to just go play golf, honestly, you'd probably never have even heard his name.
The tricky part is, our human brains really struggle to grasp this. We naturally think in linear terms, 1 + 1 + 1, but money grows exponentially, 1 × 1 × 1. Because it accelerates so aggressively over time, the absolute first rule of compounding is to never ever interrupt it unnecessarily.
That brings us to Section 3, the paradox of possessions, rich versus wealthy.
Let's talk about how we actually spend money once we start making it. Imagine a sleek, roaring Ferrari driving down the street. Everyone stops to look. But here is the psychological trap. When that Ferrari drives by, you aren't looking at the driver and admiring them. No, you're staring at the car and imagining how impressive you would look sitting in that driver's seat. I call this the man in the car paradox.
Most people spend absolute fortunes on luxury items to signal success, hoping to gain respect. But they completely miss the irony that onlookers aren't impressed by the owner. They're just using those items to benchmark their own fantasies. The harsh truth is, no one is as impressed with your stuff as you are. And this exposes a huge, fundamental difference in finance. Being rich is just current, visible income. It's exactly what you see: the cars, the giant houses, the designer clothes. But being wealthy is what you don't see. It's the hidden, unspent money sitting in a bank account or an investment portfolio. Wealth is all the options and the freedom waiting for you that you haven't yet cashed in. As this fantastic quote from Rich Dad Poor Dad points out, to build real wealth, you have to acquire assets first and practice restraint. You can't just immediately blow your cash flow trying to look wealthy to strangers on the street. True wealth is built quietly. Which leads us to our final takeaway, Section 4, the highest dividend: time and freedom. We have to ask, what is the actual point of building wealth in the first place? The absolute highest dividend that money pays isn't a mansion, it isn't jewelry, and it isn't a fancy title. It is the ability to wake up every single morning, maybe without an alarm clock, look out the window and say, I can do whatever I want today. Controlling your own time is the greatest measure of success there is. Freedom is the real prize.
And to achieve that kind of freedom, you have to realize that you're a flawed, emotional human being, not a sterile spreadsheet. Your financial strategy shouldn't be obsessed with being mathematically perfect or coldly rational. Honestly, aiming to just be mostly reasonable works a whole lot better. You should do whatever maximizes your ability to sleep incredibly well at night.
So, if you want to master your money psychology, intentionally build a margin of error into your life. Save for the wildly unpredictable events you can't possibly foresee. Stay incredibly humble when you win so you can survive the inevitable losses. Because doing that ensures you stay in the game long enough for compounding to work its magic.
As we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with a provocative thought to ponder today. When you look at your own bank accounts and your own goals, what do you actually want your money to do for you? Are you just using it to buy more possessions to impress strangers? Or are you using it to buy back your time, your freedom, and your life? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this dive into the psychology of money, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.